Hello everyone. Today we're at Didcot Railway Centre, home of the Great Western, and also home to my favorite British steam locomotive, GWR's Trojan. There were a few engines sitting out in the yard, including 4144, the engine that would pull us today. We headed into the public engine sheds, where we found this guy.
Oh, I'm hurt! Oh, my neck!
We also found this locomotive sitting at the front of the shed. This engine isn't actually owned by Didcot, but was just visiting for a 10-year-long repair. The repairs were just recently completed, and it was gonna run in a couple days. But if you look behind him, you will see it's him.
Okay, cut the music. You see, Trojan isn't actually the basis for Percy. No, you can't just do that.
Also in the shed was a consolidation, a 10-wheeler, another 10-wheeler, and Diesel 10. Yes, I know it's not actually Diesel 10. Calm down, people. Also in the shed was this goober that I completely forget the name of.
Oh, hello, mate.
We then headed over to the restoration shed, where we found this engine. This mogul was the first ever Great Western locomotive saved from Barry Island scrapyard. There was also a pannier.
No, don't you do it, Sage.
Fine. On our way back to the yards, we found this very nice 10-wheeler. Seriously, what is it with GWR and 10-wheelers? And we saw the 08 running on the demonstration line. Running next to the other demonstration line, where 4144 will be running, is an all-diesel mainline consisting of mostly cross-country voyagers. Once the Prairie had pulled out of the shed, they backed up onto the demonstration line to get the coaches. While watching that Hunslet from earlier do some switching, this happened. This was soon followed by a second one. Once they were coupled up, they headed into the station to pick up their first round of passengers. At the signaling museum, we were flipping these two signal levers when we realized they were actually connected to real signals. After messing around with that for a while, we headed over to the demonstration line to see the first run of the prairie. And just before the prairie came back, and since the Voyagers usually come in bursts, here came the second one. After that, we decided to ride the train. While we were waiting in the station, the only Class 165 train to come through today, of course, came through while Railway Lad wasn't filming. After that train, it was time our train made its way down the line. I got off the train, while Railway Lad decided to stay on. He told me to watch him, and that he was going to do something funny out the window.
Try!
After that, I headed over to the coal tower that overlooks the sheds. While I was in there, the crew started pulling the quarry Hunslet out to do some switching. Once they were clear one of the switches, they headed forward on the line towards the shed. At first, I assumed they were just going to park the Hunslet, but then they coupled up to the visiting locomotive and pulled it out of the shed, all while Railway Lad was still stuck on the train. Once it was pulled out of the siding, they then shunted it into the shed to get ready for the next weekend when it would be running. Once the visitor was safely parked in the shed, they backed the Hunslet out to continue their switching. This time they were grabbing not one, but two locomotives. The steam engine got back into the station while they were switching, so I didn't film it, and it then headed out on its next journey. As it was going, the Hunslet started pulling out the locomotives, the first one being a pannier tank, also known as Duck from Thomas & Friends. I could make that joke, Railway Lad's still on the train. He's right behind me, isn't he?
Yes, I am.
Castle Class and the pannier were put back in the shed in the same berth as the visitor. the Hunslet then disconnected and ran into the shed one last time. This time, the target was Pendennis Castle. After that, it was time for the steam engine to go out on another run. With all the locals in the shed, the Hunslet ran down to the entrance to grab some passenger cars. A Voyager came through mere seconds later. With the Hunslet now tied down in the siding, I turned my attention back to the steam engine as it came charging back towards the first station. was getting closer and closer to the 4 o'clock closing time, so the shed doors were starting to be closed. So we headed in there for one last look at the engines that were freshly moved into the shed. Of course, while we were in the shed, British weather decided to be British weather and start pouring down raining. That wouldn't keep the trains from running though, and that means we're out there seeing them. While walking over to one of the model shops, we were jump scared by the class away from earlier heading back to the shed. After that, the Prairie and its now empty train headed off the display line back onto the shed track. However, they weren't putting the engine and coaches in the shed, instead running them all the way back to the other display line before bringing the engine back to the ash pit. We didn't know this, so we just sat there patiently waiting for 4144 to make its way back. While waiting, a cross-country Voyager kept us entertained. We also passed the time by looking in the truck where they store the Dale with Thomas faces. Once Once we finally figured out where 4144 and the coaches went, we headed down to the other display track where we just barely caught 4144 making its way back to the shed. Why not some pacing on foot? They were going slow enough that I decided to chase them by foot all the way back to the coaling tower. Once they parked the engine and started dumping the ash, I got some very nice reflection shots of the locomotive in the coal tower. On our way out, we got jump scared by this random 387. Oh yeah, and I got a model of that mogul that was the first one saved from Barry Island.
No. Wait.